What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the SEC East college football betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, is Collin Wilson. It's the most listened to episodes back to back. We're going to have another episode on SEC West coming right after this of all of our preseason previews, and it means that we're getting tantalizingly close to week 0 and beyond. Can you feel it in the air, Collin?
I can feel it in the air, but this is not the podcast where I get to talk about the Razorbacks. Now, I do get to be at home in the SEC. We welcome you in, Stuckey, a couple of years, moving into Lex, and now he's a part of the SEC. And I think by the time Greg Sankey's done, every team that's worth a shit is going to be in the SEC. So, we get to talk about the East, kind of the same dilemma we had with the Big Ten podcast, right? It's like there's Ohio State, and then there's all these other teams. So with this, there's Georgia, and then there's all these other teams. So it'd be interesting to hear your take, because I think you and I have a disagreement about Kentucky.
Yeah, SEC, like Alabama, which we'll get to when we get to the SEC West, they're the favorite to win the SEC. They're minus 400 to win the SEC West. Georgia's minus 550 to win the SEC East. Their win total over 10.5, minus 250, which is just ridiculous. I project them 10.84 wins. So I lean under at that price. I think they end up dropping a game. Look, there's going to be, everyone's out for them now. They have to replace a ton of talent. I wouldn't be shocked if, they fall to, say, at South Carolina, depending on what we get from Spencer Rattler, or certainly at Mississippi State, a team that I love this year. We'll get to in the SEC West. But I do have Georgia as the third best team in the country, but I wouldn't be shocked if they end up being like 14 points worse than Alabama this year. Will Muschamp in as defensive coordinator. They do only have 4 true road games. Like, it's a pretty easy schedule for Georgia for the defending national championship. Their only true road games are South Carolina, Missouri, Mississippi State, and then Kentucky. So it's a pretty favorable schedule, all things considered. But they lost a ton of talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball, to the NFL. They also lost their best receiver to Alabama. Their tight end room is loaded. Stetson Bennett is back at quarterback. Their defense is still going to be excellent. You still have Ringo locking down one side of the field at corner. But I just think that this, they're going to be favored in all 12 games. But I think that this team is, going to be a bit vulnerable maybe early on. If everything goes right for Oregon, I don't know. Does Oregon pull another Ohio State game? I would lean under. You can find like under 11.5, minus 170. I wish it was a little better price than that, but I would lean under with Georgia. And I think they're ripe for maybe someone picking them off in the SEC East. This is like the Bama. Georgia's now up there with Bama. So it's like everything went right. And they have all these pros. You lose, and then you're vulnerable for a year. Like Alabama was vulnerable last year. This year, nope. So what are your thoughts on the Bulldogs this year?
I mean, frankly, I think, yes, they are vulnerable for a loss. Someone in the East can get them. I don't think that it's going to be South Carolina. That is a really tough spot after playing Arkansas, 2 very physical, trenches that are going to beat up on South Carolina in a row. So we'll see if they can pull it off there. But you're right, just 40% back on this defense. But does that matter? Are we in the reloading phase? Has Georgia reached the blue bloods of college football, where Ohio State returns 2 starters and all of a sudden everybody writes them off, or Alabama?
But even when Alabama does do that, when they reload after a national championship, when they have like a historic team, they've rarely gone undefeated the next year, right? I mean, Alabama was like the ebbs and flows of like, all right, we won it all with this ridiculous team. We reloaded. We're still going to be a top 5 team, but and everyone's gunning for you, and so I would bet that Georgia drops a game here, but
and repeating as a national champion is almost, it's nearly impossible, right? We just don't see it. Even Alabama goes every other year, and so 40% comes back to Georgia's defense, as the defense was number 2 in success rate, number 1 in finishing drives. So obviously they, Kirby's got it rolling there. We said this years ago, Georgia is now the new Alabama. They're just dressed in Bulldogs clothes. So when you break down the schedule, I have the projected 11.1 wins. Is there a vulnerable spot on this schedule? Particularly, I think it's at Kentucky and back-to-back road games. by them.
Yeah, at Miss State, that won't be easy too.
At Miss State won't be easy whatsoever. But Kentucky, someone's going to have to learn to defend these tight ends. That's the problem. Brock Bowers is a man possessed. Arik Gilbert, maybe the most talented tight end to come out of recruiting rankings. Darnell Washington can hold his own. We may not have George Pickens. We may not have, some of these wide receivers that we were, so happy to back and put our money down for a national championship last year. But we have tight ends galore here. And I'm a little nervous about what linebacker unit in the SEC is going to be able to keep up if they change this offense. If Todd Monken says, you know what, now we're going to focus on doing crossing routes, we're going to do things with tight ends and motion, and that's going to be tough for teams to get a hold of. So we'll figure out, how that plays against Oregon coming out in the opener against Dan Lanning. No one knows the Georgia defense better than this opening game against Dan Lanning. But then again, you got
with the entire summer and spring, this is all he wants to prepare. And I'm sure that's all he's been doing every waking hour is game prepping for this game. I do like Oregon plus 17.5 in that game for what it's worth.
Yeah, because you're going to have a lot of Georgia athletes on the defensive side. I mean, you have Nolan Smith Jr. coming back. You have Ringo, you mentioned, coming back, and Christopher Smith back there at strong safety. But other than that, you're going to have a bunch of highly recruited athletes just roaming the field trying to make a tackle. So I think Oregon can be successful in moving the ball. I don't think
Bo Nix season, baby, and his legs. And then Oregon does have one of the best offensive lines in the country, which is important against Georgia.
Right. And so their success against Ohio State was really just those zone runs off tackle. I mean, Ohio State had no answer for that whatsoever. I think Oregon money line in the first half could be a really good play considering what comes back on this defense. But from an overall,
and by the way, you said linebackers, Oregon and their 4.25 with their money in Mac, they might have two of the best in the country, led by Sewell.
Yeah,
with flow back from injury. So they have some linebackers that can match up here.
Well, and Stetson Bennett is back. Your favorite Heisman candidate, Stetson Bennett, is back to run this offense again. And I think really he's found his groove. Todd Monken knows how to use him. He's going to be, there's not a lot of depth now that JT Daniels is really there, but Carson Beck is there. Brock Vandergriff is there. But Stetson Bennett is managing this offense, and actually he's put up better numbers than any quarterback he's gone up against there. So this is still the team that, to me, that's going to win the East. I don't think there's any value in the number. I do think it's an over spot. For some reason, I can't bring myself to buy these guys to make the playoff. I don't think they beat Alabama. I think they go into the SEC championship with one loss, and that means you're not going to make the playoff. So no futures for me for them, but you're right. I think Oregon Oregon money line in the first half might be worth a play, while Dan Lanning unveils what the game plan was all summer for his old team.
Well, you said Georgia might have one loss. I agree. I wouldn't be completely shocked if they had two, but look, Mississippi State might get them. But as far as division futures, I took a stab on Tennessee. We can argue about Tennessee versus Kentucky. And Tennessee, I found them at 16-1 at a book where when Kentucky was 12-1. Here's the thing. I have Tennessee power rated higher than Kentucky. I don't think you do. And so that could be where discrepancy is. And Tennessee hosts Kentucky and they host Florida. Now, look, Kentucky doesn't play Alabama and Tennessee does. And that's important. Tennessee plays the last three national champions on their schedule. But I think that this Tennessee team is worth a stab, a shot in the dark. I took them 16-1 to win the division. And it's basically going to come down to, can they go to Georgia and win? They go to Georgia. And I think if they do that and they host Kentucky, I think they're going to win the division. Now, is it a long shot that they're going to win at Georgia? Yes, but I think these odds are worth it. And I think Kentucky is overpriced. We're going to talk with Drew Franklin later about Kentucky. I have concerns about the offensive line, the young receiver room replacing Wandale Robinson. Is Chris Rodriguez going to be eligible? A coordinator change, and they lost a lot of talent on the defense. Dues for some turnover regression, but I'm lower on Kentucky than the market, and I'm higher on Tennessee. Now, we know Tennessee, I'm assuming Brew McCoy, receiver transfer from USC, is going to be eligible from everything I've read. Hendon Hooker's back. Finally, he's back, and it's just his job. Geez, how do these teams can't figure out that he should be the guy? Pro prospect. I love him. this offense will be a top 5 offense, in my opinion. I mean, it was electric last year. And in year 2 of this system with Hooker back, I think it's only going to be better. So the question comes down to the defense. And the special teams should be pretty good too. It comes down to the defense. The defense was dreadful last year. So the question is, are there signs where it can improve? Well, there's more experience. I love what they did in the transfer portal. And it's year 2 of the scheme. And then if you look at some of the underlying metrics, Tennessee actually wasn't bad. They were pretty good, actually, on standard downs. They could not get off the field on passing downs. They were horrific on passing downs, and they were horrific in the red zone. Those 2 things are very high variance stats. Standard down success tends to be more predictive. So I'm not saying this Tennessee defense is world beaters, but I think that they got a bit unlucky last year, and there's a lot of room for improvement. The offense is going to put up points, and they could score with anybody. So I'm taking a stab with Tennessee. I also went under 8 wins for Kentucky. It's at 7.5. I need 8 for what it's worth. I would pay up to like -120 for that. They basically, I project them at like 7-4-ish. And when I look at their schedule, I mean, they have, if you assume, maybe they beat Georgia, but if you assume that's a loss, and then they have 5 pretty easy wins, although Kentucky sometimes gives you scares at home against like a Miami, Ohio, or Northern Illinois, wouldn't shock me. But then they have basically 6 coin flips. So if you assume they're 5-1, with the Georgia loss, just as a conservative estimate, and they win all the games they should, they have 6 coin flips. I'm going to bet that they don't go 4-2 in those games. There's reason to believe, and those games would be Miss State at home, who I'm higher on, at Ole Miss, at Tennessee, who I'm higher on, Louisville, who I think will be pretty damn good by the end of the year, and then at Missouri. There'll be maybe a close to a touchdown favorite in a tough spot though. So I'm going to bet they don't go 4-2 in those games. I show some value in the number, enough I don't like about them. So taking a stab with Tennessee, just the upside, like as far as win total with Tennessee, I project 7.9. Their win total is over 7.5 -170. So I don't see a ton of value in the win total. I just think, and by the way, they were 1-3 1 possession games last year. I think that if the defense really takes the next step, the offense is going to be a top 5 unit, in my opinion. Then there's upside here. And with that offense, and I'm a little lower on Georgia, and I think Georgia's going to be vulnerable. Can Tennessee nab that game? Probably not, but I think it's worth it at 16-1, especially since I'm higher on Tennessee than Kentucky. Give me your thoughts on those 2 teams.
I think I'm the exact opposite of you on both. I mean, Tennessee, I have no love for. And when you mentioned the schedule and talking about winning at Georgia, Alabama's on this schedule. I mean, there is a stint here where we're coming off of a bye week. We're going at LSU, and then we're playing Alabama. Now, you could say what you want about what LSU is going to do in the West. It's really a crapshoot what we're going to get out of those guys. But what we do know is that they are huge. They are physical. They are fast, and they're going to be well coached. And then they're going to trickle into an Alabama game where I don't think they have a shot in hell. I don't think anybody that's running the Josh Heupel up tempo has a shot to beat Nick Saban. I think he's licked that with the way that Lane Kiffin has been giving him the treatment the last couple of years. And then you look at the rest of the schedule, right? There is heads up with Kentucky that comes after UT Martin, and that comes right before at Georgia. But there are just issues with this team. Like, listen, they return all their offensive linemen. That's great until you realize they were 106th in pass blocking. They were almost dead last in passing down sack rate. Once you get off that, the coverage, the secondary was just not pulling their weight whatsoever. 105th in third down conversion rate. They were only 75th in getting pressure on the quarterback. I understand. I love Hendon Hooker. I loved him when he was at Virginia Tech. I think the marriage with Josh Heupel was a great idea. They're doing great things on offense. They're going to score a lot of points. They're going to throw a lot of golf balls. They're going to kick a lot of mustard bottles on the field, but the defense is not there. They're leaky in the secondary. Their offensive line cannot protect Hendon Hooker whatsoever, and that is not going to improve with the defensive lines that I'm seeing on the schedule. Now, I am not that far off from your projection. I make it 7.1. It's not like I'm a big Tennessee hater, but there is a hell of a lot of Kool-Aid being drank on Tennessee every year in July and August, and they get on the field and you realize, we've got issues here and we got issues there. Kentucky's a different story for me. I mean, I see, some of the.
No way, this is the first time I'm drinking the Tennessee Kool-Aid. So,
okay,
yes, I understand a lot, but this is my first sip. Cue the Rocky Top. I'm in with you this year, Knoxville. I mean, look, my family and friends are going to hate me for this. I'm just slandering Kentucky and talking about Tennessee, but I go where my money tells me to go. But so go ahead.
Well, I mean, listen, I will say this: the old Rocky Top Tennessee. That's my favorite song in all the SEC. I don't care. I mean, I graduated from Arkansas, but Tennessee has the best fight song in the league. It's not even close. So I will give them that. Now, Kentucky, on the other hand, I just see a ton of stability here, right? We're talking 71% back on the offensive side of the ball, 82% back on the defensive side of the ball. This is a top 10 success rate on offense, third in finishing drives. Now they get running back Chris Rodriguez is coming in, yards after contact, 3.94. He was 12th in the nation when it comes to that, 24th in explosive run rate. They return a ton on offense. I think they're going to be solid once again. They don't give up the ball. They don't have a lot of turnovers. They're not flashy, but they can do enough to beat you down. 82% comes back to this defense. Now, they had a real problem stopping teams from getting first downs, but they were, top 50 in finishing drives. Their havoc did fall off a little bit. I would expect some of that to come back. Defensive coordinator Brad White, that pressure rate came back down to 100, but they do have pieces on the defensive side that I think, can actually, get Kentucky back to being the second best team in this division. And I don't see Alabama on the schedule, right? I mean, Alabama is on Tennessee's schedule. I think there's some easier games here. They get Florida a little bit early after Miami of Ohio, going to mix in a MAC team and Youngstown State before another at Ole Miss. But, when you look at this schedule, you're getting 2 road games out of the way right away. And Ole Miss, we'll get to the SEC West preview. They're I believe, going to be a shadow of themselves, especially at the quarterback position this year. If you look at the schedule, 3 home games to end the season. One of those is Georgia, but I just think it's.
What are you betting with Kentucky, by the way? Are you betting the win total, or are you betting the?
I'm betting. I make it 8.2. I'm betting the over on these guys. I'm betting the over on their win total. I believe in Kentucky. I think they're the second best team in the East right now.
Head to head, you and I on Kentucky. Yep. I can't believe it.
Do you not enjoy all these Will Levis, like this eating banana with the peel? Do you not like the mayo in the coffee? This kid's if he can do all this shit that he's doing on social media, he can run through any defense except for Georgia.
I also think that all the love that Will Levis is getting is shocking to me. As like number 1 overall pick. Like Carson Strong was getting last year, then he went undrafted, which is pretty crazy. Same thing with Malik Willis. I can't see. I don't think Will Levis is going to end up being a top number 1 pick, but we'll see. And we'll have to make do without Wan'Dale Robinson, a massive loss, responsible for 43% of their explosive plays last year. Most in college football, even more than your boy Treylon Burks, who was second. We'll get to Arkansas and the impact of his loss in the SEC West preview. But let's move on to the team with the 4th best odds. The only one really in the conversation that anyone else could make a case for is Florida, 16-1. Over 7, -115. Brand new staff in Billy Napier, not Gillespie, and new coordinators. They were 1-4, 1 possession games last year. They kind of maybe quit down the stretch. I will say with Napier, he runs like a spread option attack that Levi Lewis really excelled in at Louisiana. So Anthony Richardson, who's had accuracy issues throwing the ball, but obviously he's really electric. A lot of explosive plays with his arm, but the down accuracy leaves a lot to be desired. But he obviously can do a lot with his legs. His skill set should at least fit the scheme that Napier wants to run on offense. There are questions on this defensive line. They're going to expect them to run a 3-3-5 outside of Dexter. The defensive line has some questions. Depth overall, there are some questions. But it's a decent roster. I still think there's going to be growing pains in Napier's first year. I think, when you look at the schedule, you start with Utah and Kentucky at home. Then you have USF, then you're at Tennessee. That's a tough three of their first 4 games. That's really tough for a team with a new staff, new schemes. So they really could start 1-3. But, if you get that Utah game, all of a sudden, things are looking a lot rosier in Gainesville. So a good thing with their start of their schedule is they only leave the state of Florida once prior to November 5th. 6 of their first 7 games are at home. And then, they will play Georgia and Jacksonville. And then they close up the season at Florida State. So, I think that the total at over 7 -115 I think is about right. If you put a gun to my head, I'd bet the under, but I'm staying away from Florida. Do you have any hot takes here?
No, I'm at 6 on the win total. I am well below a lot of other projections. I'm well below the win total.
Shocker.
I would take an under here because you got to get to 8 wins to cash this ticket. And I'm looking at the schedule, and after this bye week, we're looking at Georgia, Texas A&M. We just have one home game after the bye week, by the way. When they play on October 15th against LSU at home, they'll be in Gainesville just once the rest of the year. So, we'll see if they can, be road tested and get some wins there. But Georgia, Texas A&M, and South Carolina, back to back to back, are how beat up are they going to be when they go and play Vanderbilt? And I'm not sitting here claiming Vanderbilt's going to get an upset victory. But how much are you overlooking Florida State, which is going to be big for the recruiting pipeline and big for Billy, not Gillespie, Napier, to come back and go into see if he can make a bowl game, which he should from the projection. But I think it's going to be 6. And there's, Todd, the third and Grantham thing is going to take a while to get back from. This defense was so bad on third downs under Todd Grantham with Dan Mullen, and they are still going to try to rebound from having a coverage rank of 109th. They weren't stuffing runs at the line of scrimmage. I still don't know who that Florida team was that challenged Alabama there and was, stuffing runs at the line of scrimmage there, because it didn't show up in the stats for the rest of the season. Offensively, I mean, we love Anthony Richardson. We love to put our money behind him, but is he the only weapon that they have? He's really kind of questionable when it comes to the passing game. What's he going to do in third and long? I mean, he is an electric player and he can break any run, needed. So can he stay healthy instead of doing break dancing and pulling a hamstring or a knee or whatever it was? But I think they are improving. The defense is going to improve. The offense has got to get back to, doing what they do best. I just don't think they're there. And, I'm not trying to back a coach moving from the Sun Belt to the SEC and looking at a schedule like this. Because if you get injuries piling up and then you hit your bye week and you're only home once for the rest of the year, this could be a pretty long season. So we'll see what they do. There's going to be a lot of RPOs and pistol formation and zone runs out of Anthony Richardson. That's going to be great. But like a couple other teams, especially the one, the university I graduated from, when you get off schedule, what can your quarterback do? And in this case, I am not putting my money behind it.
Yeah, my concern would be, I'm pretty close. I'm a little barely under 7, but marginal. But my concern would be, it comes down to those first 2 games are huge against Utah and Kentucky.
Yep.
They're essentially coin flips. When I say coin flips, I mean like spread between 4 and 4, generally speaking. And then, but they're installing a lot of new things with a new staff, and you get those 2 games right away. And then I mentioned the depth. There are some depth questions at a number of different key position groups. So then later in the year, after that gauntlet, like you said, how beat up are they, and how bad does that lack of depth at certain areas hurt? So it would be under nothing for me, but I don't show enough value to hit it. All right, let's hit the last 3 teams in the SEC East before we get to Drew. South Carolina, 40-1 to win the East, over 6.5 plus 120. If they should be favored in 5 games, and I think this number is about right, similarly to Florida. It's year 2 of Shane Beamer, and he brings in Spencer Rattler. Last year, they were starting receivers at quarterback in the bowl game, which they somehow beat North Carolina with. Beamer and Rattler were together in OU in 2019-20. This is also the first time South Carolina has the same defensive line coach in 5 years, so they're starting to have some continuity. But all this is, and they also have a pretty veteran offensive line. All this is, it comes down to Spencer Rattler. Can he get back to who he was? And I'm not talking about to win the SEC. I'm talking about to go over the win total. Can he get back to who he was supposed to be? Is he kind of shook from what happened at Oklahoma? Is it going to take him time to adjust? So I think it's going to be interesting. It is a team to watch early on. They open with Georgia State, which could be tricky, one of the most experienced teams in the country. And then they're at Arkansas, and then home against Georgia. Not very forgiving schedule early on. So, they have Charlotte at home, South Carolina State. If you assume Georgia State at home is also a win, you get Missouri at home, you're at Vanderbilt. So there's 5 pretty winnable games on the schedule. And then it's a matter of, okay, can you pick off Texas A&M at home? Can you beat Tennessee at home to get to 6? So I'm at like 5. Let's see. I'm at their win total is sitting at over 6.5 plus 120. I'm at 595. So I guess I would lean under. I think they probably end up finishing 6-6 if Rattler is not a complete disaster. I like what Beamer's doing with this program, but I'm not going over yet, and I just don't know what to really expect from Rattler. What do you think with the Cox?
You mean the team that cost us a whole bunch of money last year? Like we had a very large, I had a very large position on the under, and this team won 3 games that were decided within 4 points. They had the horseshoe up the ass, especially at the quarterback position. But, I'm not going to go and say that, Shane Beamer's lucky. I think he actually is a really good coach, and he's going to have a lot of success in South Carolina. That is, if a bigger program doesn't come calling and take him out of there. The amount of transfers that they got, they're only 18th in FBS and the number of players they got, which was 9. And really they were 12th in snaps that they gained, 8,250. But the problem is this is not a problem, but the snaps that they got were from excellent players. I mean, besides Spencer Rattler, they bring in a boatload of playmakers, some good players on defense. And that it's just interesting to see how that's going to mesh, especially when you start off with a Georgia State team that is pretty stout from a Sun Belt perspective, from experience. It should be interesting to see, because South Carolina should always outclass them, but Georgia State is right up there. And if South Carolina takes it easy, you got Arkansas the next week coming to town. And that's going to be really interesting, because Spencer Rattler does not do well with pressure, and his footwork is not as good as some other quarterbacks we've seen. When Caleb Williams came into play, it was just like a completely different animal. Now, at that point, was Spencer Rattler checked out? Had he bought too much of himself in? There's a lot of stories coming out of OU in that locker room. And so you have to wonder, like, where Spencer Rattler's head is now that he's at South Carolina, and is he a little bit more humble and ready to hit targets and make some money? I think he's always ready to make money, but he struggles with pressure, and this is an offensive line that returns less than half their snaps from last year. Now, a lot of the players on the offensive line have starting experience, but they do take a hit, and the offensive line was not a very high performing unit last year. So they have to keep Rattler clean. They have to keep the pocket empty of any blitzes or else Rattler's going to get off pace. He's not going to be able to hit his targets, especially his tight end that followed him from OU. And, the defensive front, the front 7, they're not really up there when it comes to applying pressure. That's going to be an issue here. They do bring in, some players from the transfer portal that should be able to help out with that. In general, I'm not betting South Carolina. The projection I have on them is 4.4, well below, but I've been here before. I was here last year, and Shane Beamer and his shades and his TikToks and his everything else, there's no telling what he can do to energize this locker room, get them to come together and play. But this schedule is rough. So, hats off to them if they go over the win total. But if I had to make a bet, I would go under. There's too much to try to repair on this defense that was near dead last in finishing drives. Almost anyone that got within the 40 put points up on the board against South Carolina last year. And that is a tough thing to coach. So we'll see what they do. I'm still betting under on these guys, and I'll be against them definitely when Arkansas comes to town.
The new you're not making friends in Columbia.
No.
All right. Well, great place to tailgate, by the way. All right. Let's go to the last 2 teams, Missouri and Vanderbilt. Missouri's 660 to 1 to win the SECs. Vanderbilt's 500 to 1. Both recently named starting quarterbacks from quarterback competitions. It looks like Missouri is going to go with Brady Cook, and it looks like Vanderbilt is going to go with Mike Wright over Seals. Wright is the more mobile one. I think they like his legs and what he can do from that perspective, especially when you have offensive line problems. Missouri's defense actually started to improve again last year, but now you lose, new defensive coordinator, and you lose 3 position coaches on the defensive side of the ball. You're really relying on transfers. You lost your entire defensive line room, 1 linebacker and 1 cornerback to the NFL. D should stay 4-2-5, but you'll replace the 3rd corner with a safety. So I do have some questions about the defense and the continuity there. And then on the offensive end, they couldn't throw the ball at all last year. They have some talent on the outside. They need these receivers to step up, but the quarterback play has just been so questionable. I'm not sure that improves, but it can't get much worse than what Bazelak showed at times last year. The problem is they lose Tyler Beatty and 2 of their best offensive linemen, and Beatty did everything for them, just a complete workhorse. They do have 7 winnable games on, without major upsets. on the schedule. Their win total is over 5.5 plus 125. They finished 500 each of the past 3 years. This is year 3 for Drinkwitz, and he's brought in some good recruiting classes. They have some promising transfers. Can he put it all together? Probably comes down to the quarterback and how this defense comes together. No play for me here. Any thoughts on Missouri?
I'll be hitting Kansas State in week 2 against Missouri. There's some, efficiency in the trench that I just don't think is going to come around. And Drinkwitz is still looking for people to A, understand his playbook, and B, run it. So we'll see if Cook, who was named way earlier as quarterback than I expected, but I guess that's either how much confidence they have in him, or B, they know he has so much upside. Let's start building the confidence in him so that he can actually execute the offense. But the numbers are really bad. They were 118th in explosive play rate on offense. And then on defense, they were 115th in third down conversions. Everybody converted a third down against them. So, we'll see what they can do. But I am not a fan of this schedule. I think Drinkwitz knows that he has to get something going here. But one of the games that you have to get over this win total is that Kansas State game. And Kansas State is nasty in the trenches on both sides of the ball. And that's going to be an issue for a Missouri offense that's, still green, trying to learn, brand new. And then the defense on the other side, near dead last in finishing drives and outside the top 100 defensive success rate. And they do not cause any havoc whatsoever. So, good luck to Missouri. I enjoyed Drinkwitz.
Your boys.
Yeah. I enjoyed Drinkwitz at SEC Media Days. We called him Filibuster Drinkwitz because he got up there and talked for about 20 minutes. No one got to ask any questions. But listen, they don't have a true quarterback in place. This is going to be tough sledding for Missouri.
My prediction: they beat Arkansas to close out the year to go over the win total. All right, let's close out here with Vanderbilt. Vandy, like I said, 500 to win the East. Over 2.5 wins plus 110. They've lost 21 straight in the SEC. Mike Wright named the starting quarterback. Major questions on the offensive line, the defensive line. This trench just can't really compete in the SEC. New defensive coordinator, Nick Howell, is going to try and create some pressure. Linebacker, the strength of the defense, everything else is up in question. They even lost their best offensive lineman to Alabama. Howell's a Bronco Mendenhall protege. We'll see what he can do, but doesn't have a lot to work with. This win total, if you want to bet the over, good luck to you if you do. You're assuming they win at Hawaii. They're 7-point favorites now, and then they have Elon at home. I've seen Vandy. Vandy almost lost to UConn, I think, last year. But if you assume they start 2-0, it's like, where do you get the third win? They're at NIU. They're home against Wake. And by the way, news just came out today that Sam Hartman was going to be out indefinitely. Major downgrade to the backup if that ends up being the case. And the guy that Clausen really liked ended up transferring out, as the future quarterback. However, this is from a friend of a friend, so I don't have any inside information. But from what I heard within the last hours, he's going to be fine and play week 1. So I don't know. Just throwing that out there. But maybe you get Wake at home, and if Hartman's not playing, maybe you win that game. But I don't know where the third one's coming from. They lost 21 straight in the SEC. At NIU, at Bama, Ole Miss at home, at Georgia, at Missouri, who's off of a bye, South Carolina at home. You'll say that's their win. At Kentucky, Florida at home, Tennessee at home. So it's going to be tough to get the third win, assuming they win at Hawaii, which isn't a given. They're 7-point favorites. And then take care of business against Elon. I think the number is around right. But you couldn't get me to bet this over. You already got me to bet Kansas over. Are you going to try to get me to bet Vanderbilt over?
Well, Vanderbilt's going to be the best program in the nation if you ask Clark Lee. So that's something to keep in mind. But
top 5 hardest schedule, by the way, doesn't help.
Yeah, no, it doesn't help whatsoever. But you're right. I don't know how they get to 3 wins here. I do believe Hawaii is going to be a win. I've already betted in the award-winning Action Network app. But there's going to be a lot of trading in that game. 6.5s are going to get a lot of Vanderbilt money. 7.5s are going to get a lot of Hawaii money. But at least Vanderbilt's coming into year 2 with Clark Lee, as to where Hawaii is it's not starting from scratch. There's just nothing to scratch. There's nothing. Timmy Chang has got a heck of a job in front of him to try to get that team to do anything.
I'm looking at that over too. I imagine, Hawaii's defense they lost everything possible they lost. And I imagine that Vanderbilt, will be able to move the ball a bit. You would hope. And then, Vanderbilt's defense can't get any pressure whatsoever. And you would think that with Chang, they're going to go, it's going to be air raid, run and shoot, and they're going to go really fast is my assumption. The problem is you could just see horrific execution in this game from the offenses, down in the red zone and bad mistakes. So
yeah,
I'm looking at the over at 55, but we'll see if I end up getting there.
And I think they've already named Mike Wright as quarterback, and he can scoot.
Yep.
I mean, he's going to make some explosive plays, and then just in some weird world, Vanderbilt does have a big lead. Ken Seals is, a very serviceable backup there from a throwing the ball perspective. And they like to do a lot of quick game passing, right? They're trying to cut down on the havoc allowed with the INTs and stuff like that by throwing real fast. And, it's a Clark Lee defense. He comes from Notre Dame, formerly underneath Mike Elko. So you're going to see a lot of 4-2-5, aggressive with the blitz, dropping 8 and passing down. So there's, I think, a big coaching mismatch with that Hawaii game, which is another reason that I hit it. But as far as getting over, the win total, when you're going to march into DeKalb, Illinois, and you're going to be a 7-point dog, maybe 8-point dog to Northern Illinois, and you're an SEC team, you got a tough schedule ahead of you. So no way, no thanks. I'm betting on this win total.
All right. Before we get out of here, and before we get out of here, let's bring in Drew Franklin, good friend of mine, and get his thoughts on Kentucky football. All right, it's time to bring in a personal friend of mine and one of the most well-known people in Lexington and on the streets of Kentucky, everything Kentucky, really, Mr. Drew Franklin. Drew, thanks for coming on. Excited to talk some Kentucky football with you, brother.
Of course, anything for you in the Action Network, and I appreciate you throwing on some UK gear today. Is that just because I'm here, or is this an everyday thing since you're a Lexingtonian?
It depends on if my wife if Mac's mad at me or not. And I'm trying to get on her good side. But yeah, maybe I'm trying to get on your good side a little as well. But I'm an adopted Kentucky fan, for sure. And before we get into football, and I try to tell everyone, because that's not from here, now that I've been here for a couple of years, just how big Kentucky basketball is. And what everyone's talking about. I talked to multiple people today about the fact that Kentucky is in the Bahamas, and it's like a big deal here. You go to Drew's Bar, Chaos Bar. Though I think you're having an event there, right, for it?
Yeah, giving away $500 at halftime of every game. We're so excited to party. We're gonna pretend like we're at the beach.
Can you promise me? I think I saw Mr. Shebway at Stagger, by the way, this past weekend.
Mr. Shebway is a man about town.
He is. Can you ensure me that Kentucky, we're both affiliated indirectly or directly with the bar business. Can you guarantee me that Kentucky will not lose in the first round to St. Peter's again?
But I'm still in disbelief. I mean, it's been like 6 months, 5 months, however long it's been. I was sitting courtside, and when the game ended, I just was staring into space. I didn't know how to react because I was just absolutely stunned. So no, I will not guarantee it again, but hopefully we're long past that. They're looking good and should play well in the Bahamas this week. They're on SEC Network for the next 4 nights.
Yep. Can't wait to check that out as well. But let's move on to football, the more pressing topic for most outside of Lexington. Kentucky football expectations. I think they just came out in the coaches poll, number 21. This is a team you got to give a lot of credit to what Stoops has done. I think this is a team that won double-digit games once between 78 and 2018, and they've done it twice since 2018, including last year. There is a lot of change, but you got Will Levis back. Let's start with, I think, the biggest question that I have. I'm curious to get your thoughts on it. It's kind of a 2-part question. New offensive coordinator, but he comes from the Shanahan tree, right? A lot of the same schemes, philosophically similar. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on if you expect any change or growing pains in that aspect. But more importantly, I would say the foundation of this Kentucky team as a whole and their newfound success in recent seasons has been, the big blue wall and the offensive line, which has just been so good. And there's a lot of turnover. You lose a couple guys to the NFL, and then your left tackle, Rosenthal, who gave up 1 sack last year. And I don't think he's on an NFL roster now, but I have a feeling he'll find his way onto one. So first 2-part question, Are you concerned at all with the offensive coordinator change? And then more importantly, what are your thoughts on the offensive line?
I really like the hire, and the players seem to like the hire. But I mean, I admit there are some concerns. Not really a proven play caller, not a lot of success, especially at the college level, coming from the NFL. I do like that they kept that Shanahan NFC West NFL system going, even though with Rich Scangarello, who they hired from the 49ers, he's doing it a little differently, and he's being very secretive. I actually was just in an interview with him this morning. I mean, he is revealing nothing and bragging about how he's revealing nothing because he doesn't want Florida in week 2 to know what's coming his way. But having been to an open practice, we have a fullback. We got those back, not the quite Mike Allstott style, but he's worked that in. That's something Liam Cohen didn't do last year. And he's really, really, really looking at the tight ends, which is a very, very deep group. Again, play calling, I say, was a slight concern, but overall, we're pretty excited to have him at Kentucky, and the players really like the system. Every day they're watching 49ers film. And then when we get to talk to them, they're so excited. And like our tight ends have been watching Kittle, and you got Juszczyk, and we got receivers thinking they can be Debo. So at least keeping that NFL continuity is good. And we'll see how it translates on the field. But right now, he's not revealing much.
How about the offensive line?
Offensive line, obviously question marks. As you said, Darrell Rosenthal was great last year, LSU transfer. The Falcons picked him up, and then he kind of disappeared from that roster. So I'm not sure where he'll end up, but I agree with you that he's a pro. And then Darian Kennard is another huge loss. Went to the NFL, high draft pick. Those two tackle spots, you've got some unproven talent. Jeremy Flax is one of the guys. I think he'll be okay. But overall, the line, I think, will be a slight dip, but the culture is still there with Kenneth Horsey, a veteran. And then I think at center, Eli Cox, they're moving him over from guard. He's a guy, when Kentucky signed out of just outside Lexington, honestly, we thought it was like throwing a bone to the local kid. Did not expect him to be a major contributor, just some depth. There is some buzz about him at center, filling in for Luke Fortner, who the Jacksonville Jaguars love. And I think he's going to be a name a lot of people are going to know. And it's really helped out the hire, Zach Yenzer, another 49ers guy that was with Scangarello. He was from that old Schlarman mold, the big blue wall, and that culture is still there. Just the tackle spots, a little inexperienced, so we won't know until they really start playing there. But inside, I think they're good.
Yeah, and you mentioned, week 2, Florida. There's a lot of change with the Kentucky offense, and it's not like they have the luxury of, Miami, Ohio is not no cakewalk either. I mean, they're 20-point favorites, but they have a really good quarterback, and it's not like Kentucky has the luxury of like 3, an FCS opponent, and then New Mexico State, and they have Florida week 2. So 2 questions I have to round out the offense. I'm sure you're going to say you have nothing for me, but the big question is with Chris, the 2 most talented players in the offense outside of the quarterback last year were Wan'Dale Robinson, who's gone at receiver. He was number 1 in the nation as far as responsible for explosive plays, responsible for 43% of the explosive pass plays for Kentucky. He's gone. There's still some talent that I know a lot of people in Lexington are excited about, but you have to replace him now in the NFL. And then Rodriguez, this Kentucky star back, his status has been a topic of conversation all summer. I know they brought in some depth help with the JUCO Ramon Jefferson, but any update on Rodriguez is practicing, I believe, but it's just hush is the word so far.
Yeah, I mean, that's the $1 million question. I can't go to the grocery without the lady ringing up my groceries asking me about Chris Rodriguez. Having been at the facility a few times, he's a full participant. I think we'll see him in some form. First, they have to address an off-season DUI. I think we can assume that'll be at least a game, but Mark Stoops has not said anything about that. And then there's a second matter that resurfaced in the summer. I have a pretty good idea of what that is, but it's pretty hush. It's not something, DUI is obviously awful. It's not something that makes him a bad person or anything. It's just a really unique situation. And I don't know if they will sit him out for it or play him. Stoops has been asked many times. We get a no comment every time. I think when it boils down to it, that Florida game is so important. I mean, yeah. It's SEC football. I think he'll play, but it's a big mystery right now, and there's not a lot of people wanting to talk about it. So we'll find out. I think he will miss that first game, as you said. Miami, Ohio is a tough opponent, but I don't see Mark Stoops sitting him out at Florida.
Maybe Stoops says it's a 2-game suspension, but he's only suspended for the 2 MAC games and plays week 2.
Listen, I'm a big homer. I think really punishing him all the non-conference games except Louisville would be a great way to hit him. I'll throw that out there. But it could be as many as 4. I don't think it'll be any past 4, but it is a very unique situation that'll come to light eventually, and Stoops will have to put something out there, and the clock's ticking on that. You asked about receivers too. Wan'Dale Robinson is a player unlike anything we've really seen around Kentucky. I mean, every 5 years we might get a Randall Cobb or something, but the way Levis was just able to single him out last year when the receiver room didn't really help around Robinson in that Citrus Bowl game where that last drive, I mean, everyone on Iowa's defense, a top 10 defense, knew it was going to Robinson, and he still went the leak to the field making plays. That is going to be impossible to replace. But they have a lot of young talent. Berrien Brown is a 4-star receiver who's walking around like he should already be in the NFL. Dane Key is a freshman who's going to start. There's a lot of swagger there because they've recruited a new type of athlete, but none of these guys have been on the field yet. Tavion Robinson for Virginia Tech, another big name, is kind of the new Robinson on the team, but I don't think it's fair to put Wan'Dale expectations on him. So collectively, it's a big group. No one's a Wan'Dale in there.
Yep. Moving on to the defense, they lose some key pieces. McQuall, their defensive tackle. You lose Yusuf Corker at safety. Linebacker looks really solid for the Kentucky defense, but there's some, Pascal, obviously at defensive ends. You lost some talent to the NFL. The defense has generally been solid. The pass defense took a step back last year, but they were really unlucky in turnovers across the board. So if you're a Kentucky fan, that's one thing that you're hoping for this year is better turnover luck. I mean, so just if you look at like pass deflections to interceptions and their turnover margin, there's a good chance that they might get positive regression in that aspect, but they do have to replace some key pieces. What are you most concerned about on the defense? And do you think we'll see a dip or an improvement in the pass defense? What are your overall thoughts there?
A week ago, I would have quickly replied cornerback because, I mean, last year that I think held them back from being even better. They were really weak at that spot. They added a lot of pieces. And then the one returner, the one experienced player, Carrington Valentine, he looked like a different human in the open practice last Saturday. I have new confidence in him. And they added an Ole Miss transfer, some new bodies there. It's still a big concern, but not as concerning. The nickel spot, which is a position Stoops really likes to use, they had a great player in Vito Tisdale.
Yeah, he's out for the year, right?
Yeah, and he's a rocket. He's the type of guy that's looking to knock someone's head off. A lot of fun to watch, out for the year. And then they thought Joel Williams could replace him, and he just transferred last week. So nickel's a big question mark. But overall, the defense, as you said, that linebacking group, they have so many dogs. I don't know how they're going to play them all. I think it'll be one of the top 2-3 linebacking cores in the SEC. Lots of veterans, lots of star power. Defensive line's young, but I think there's a bright future. But I think the secondary will determine what that defense does, specifically the new cornerbacks and how they fill that nickel spot.
Yeah. Well, hopefully at Florida it doesn't, Anthony Richardson has had accuracy issues, and hopefully that, they'll need some time to gel with some new pieces around. But that's definitely going to be an important game on the Kentucky schedule with, some new pieces on defense, new pieces on offense, new coordinator. You mentioned how important that game is. It probably sets the tone for the entire Kentucky football season. Their win total sitting around 7.5, 8. Maybe it comes down to that game and then Louisville at the end of the year. They do host Georgia. Are you dreaming big with an SEC division title? I was about to say SEC title, but I don't think anyone's beaten Alabama this year. Are you dreaming big with a division title? What is the kind of the ceiling for this team? And I assume you're going to tell me that people should bet the over on their win total.
Actually, I might surprise you on that. But as far as the Georgia game, we're dreaming dreams we've never dreamt before here. We realize it's still a long shot. But I think this is the first year you can actually have that conversation. Last year was Kentucky. Kentucky was pretty optimistic going down there, but also Georgia had the 85 Bears on defense, and it was at Athens. This year, you're still going to be a big underdog, but if they've played well up to that point, I mean, it's not impossible that they're undefeated when that game comes to town. I mean, that's something UK fans have never really experienced. A few years ago, the Josh Allen year, another Citrus Bowl victory, the record was good when Georgia came to town, but it didn't have quite the implications that it would this year. So that's something fans are talking about a lot. We put a poll out recently. This is a basketball school, and it was, are you more excited about football or basketball? And it was 90% football, which is unheard of in Lexington. And it's all around that Georgia game. As you said, Florida week 2, I think, can really decide it because they have non-conference home and then 2 non-conference games after Florida. So that's the difference between 3-1 and 4-0 going into Ole Miss. Ole Miss, another winnable game. I mean, Kentucky could be 5-0 before playing their first home SEC game. So I really think what happens in Gainesville is going to set the tone.
Yeah, and you hope they don't just every once in a while Kentucky will have a really head scratching home game. You hope that doesn't come to fruition against like Miami, Ohio, or Northern Illinois, like almost that Chattanooga scare last year, which that got pretty scary. But yeah, the good thing, the really thing I love about that game, because there's going to be so much buzz, as long as Kentucky doesn't have a super disappointing season, especially if they're undefeated. But the one thing I really like about their schedule is they play Vandy at home the week before. Like they're not at South Carolina, or they're not playing someone that's they're at home in a game that they should easily win and not get. They might not cover, but they're not going to get caught like looking ahead and drop that game. I don't think, at least, fingers crossed. All right, so who do you think? My final question: who do you think ends up winning the division? Gun to your head right now.
I mean,
is it Georgia?
Yeah, we're dreaming, and I've had visions of, storming that field and everybody coming to our bar down the street, and Kentucky's going to Atlanta, and I've joked about I've already booked my rooms, but Georgia's still Georgia. Kentucky's closer than they've ever been. They were just picked second in the SEC East for maybe at the first time ever. They're ranked in the coaches poll for the first time ever. This really is uncharted territory for Kentucky. It's just a matter of what they're going to do with it. Under Mark Stoops, they've been so good at being the underdog. I mean, most of the years, I think, the last 5, I think the win totals have gone to bowl games they didn't expect. But now everyone's speaking highly of them. They're voted second. Yep. This is new territory. How will they react? So we'll see how it all goes. But it's exciting times here in Lexington. We're trying not to get too excited because that program's been known to let us down at times, but they're in good shape heading into the year.
Yeah, what if, say, Kentucky beats Georgia this year? Would that be the biggest win? Would that be bigger than 2007 LSU? They beat number 1 LSU in like overtime, right?
It's the biggest. It's not even close. Well, if it has the Atlanta implications, which I'm sure it would with Georgia being involved. If they were to beat Georgia to go to the first ever SEC championship, I mean, I'm not kidding when I say there's people that would rather just beat Georgia than go to a Final Four in basketball. We've been to Final Fours, got a couple of those. We want to keep doing that. But football has never done this, ever, 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 where they are right now. And if they can take it one step farther, it'll be unlike anything we've seen in Lexington. Get the couches out. We're burning them. I might even get a teardrop tattoo for Uga. I mean, that's how excited we'll be.
Yeah, it'll be quite a party. I remember last year just cheering. I was down at Stagger. We went crazy when Kentucky punched in it at the end. They called a timeout. Shout out to Soups to cover. We were going nuts there. So I can't imagine a victory, but shout out to Andre Woodson that 2007 when Kentucky, they were like in the top 20, beat number 1 LSU, I believe like 40-37 or something in overtime. But I agree, to go to the SEC with the hype now, and people are much more bought into Kentucky football right now. And look, the silver lining after all this is there's some cupcakes on the schedule. None of them are named St. Peter's. So hopefully it's good things ahead for Kentucky.
You got to keep bringing that up.
Yeah, I'm trying to get over myself. I'm trying to get over with humor. I had friends that drove up from like North Carolina to experience like the bar scene on a Saturday night against like presumably Murray State. They got here on Friday morning and knew that Saturday night we went out. It was Murray State versus who were they playing? St. Peter's, obviously. Yeah. And it was cold and rainy out. I remember there was no one out at all. And these I felt so bad. But national championship this year.
Yeah, all right, Drew.
40-0. Appreciate you as always, and we'll catch up soon. And go Cats.
Yeah, looking forward to all your all's content. You helped me throughout the year try to stay in the green, so I'm excited for everything coming from action this fall.
All right, brother. We'll talk soon, man.
See you, man.
All right. Thanks, Drew. As always, if you're ever in Lexington, more than welcome to come stop by here at my house, and you want to check out Stagger in downtown, and then also KS Bar. You can find Drew Franklin on Twitter, and always check out Kentucky Sports Radio. All right, before we get out of here, Collin, quickly, favorite future and win total from the SEC East. I'll start. It's Kentucky under. Sorry, Drew. Sorry, all of my friends and family. Sorry to my dog. But yeah, I think this Kentucky team has more questions than answers. I show some value in the number. Also, there's expectation on this team now, and that's something that Kentucky's not used to dealing with. The offensive line is my biggest concern. That's something that's been a constant at Kentucky. My favorite feature from the SEC East. I guess it's the only one I bet, so I'll throw it. Is just a dart, some couch change on Tennessee. The hope is that the defense would improve and you steal the game in Athens. Colin?
Yeah, as much as you're trying to goat me into a Tennessee under, I'm going to pass on that, and I'll go with a Florida under. No shocker there, but it's not like
Billy Gillespie.
Yeah, not a personal bias against Mr. Billy, not Gillespie. No, it's just it's a young coach in the SEC with a young team, with a young quarterback, and not a lot of proven experience on both sides of the ball. And I think it's really, a big task to ask these guys on defense to come back, from a line yards perspective, from a coverage perspective, to the fact that they couldn't get any pressure at any time. This is going to be a problem in the SEC, and the schedule does them absolutely no favors. A bye week in the middle of the schedule, and then after that, it's like a complete road show. Not a lot of easy victories on this schedule whatsoever. And with a new coach in his first year, the Dan Mullen, Todd Grantham era is now at an end, and we've got completely different schemes and a different culture there. And I think that's going to take time to put in. So give me under on Florida. I have it marked at 6, so I'd play it all the way down to that.